Viewers, good morning. You're watching Times Now. Pratibha, thank you for taking us through those headlines. Srinjoy Chaudhary is joining our broadcast as we are set to tell you about this pivotal moment in geopolitics as Prime Minister Modi prepares to have this high-stakes bilateral with President Putin. Now, this is just a day after Prime Minister Modi had a 55-minute long conversation with the Chinese President Xi Jinping. And going by the kind of reactions that we've had already, I can tell you with some amount of certainty that the meeting at the SCO in Tianjin in China is already a success. What was the purpose of the meeting? Or in fact, before we discuss the purpose, let's set the backdrop. The backdrop was the punitive tariff imposed by Donald Trump. Donald Trump has been asking India, actually ranting against India for India's purchase of oil from Russia. Now, this is hypocritical on many counts, viewers, but the latest reaction will just blow your mind off. This is Trump's closest aide, Peter Nazzaro, once again saying things he does not understand, or the Trump administration appears completely clueless. And before we discuss that with Srinjoy and our panel of guests, let me quickly introduce Swati Joshi. Swati is joining us live from Tianjin in China. Swati, good morning.
Good morning, Pranesh. It's going to be an eventful day today. First up, let me tell you that there's a SCO Leaders Meet that is going to commence at 10 a.m. local time. So in about half an hour from now, the Prime Minister is going to be addressing the plenary session, and after which the much-awaited bilateral between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Vladimir Putin, the President of Russia. And in fact, before coming to the SCO Summit as well, he pretty much set the agenda when he spoke against the sanctions, when he spoke against tariff tyranny. Just to quickly highlight what the sentiment on ground here is about the meeting between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the President Xi Jinping. The first page of the China Daily here in my hand, there's the image of the family photo that was taken yesterday, and you'll also find this article, partnership seen as vital for Sino-Indian relations. So that's the kind of importance and significance that China gives to India and the bilateral talks between China and India. Apart from that, let me tell you that in one of the pages, I believe page number 18, it also talks about the decision taken by the US Federal Appeals Court of calling the tariff culture illegal. So, all eyes are on what are the issues now going to be raised between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the President of Russia, Putin. Will Ukraine feature in the talks? Because Zelensky had a phone conversation with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Now remember, after being to US, after that meeting in Alaska, Zelensky pretty much, is not sure of what the outcome is going to be. So he's trying to speak to India as well, hoping that India will play a big role. Remember, in 2024, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, when he met the Russian President Vladimir Putin, he did raise this issue, and he said that, there can never be peace on the battlefield, and the solution to war is only through dialogue. The Prime Minister also called the loss of innocent lives heartbreaking. So he can have that frank conversation with the Russian President. Perhaps that's the reason why Zelensky felt that India can play a big role and had that conversation with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Mr. Navarro, you spoke about him. He now believes that the way to peace partly goes through New Delhi. Well, in that case, America should have taken India into confidence instead of imposing those sanctions.
And you were talking about this man called Navarro. There's so much one can say about him, Swati, but going by the reportage in that Chinese newspaper, one just hopes that with this SCO Summit and with the plenary getting underway in a short while from now, one hopes that India and China can turn another page in their bilateral ties. On that note, let me quickly open this up. Srinjoy Chaudhary, our consulting editor here in the studio with me. Mr. Mabo, I hope I get his name right. He's the Associate Professor, School of International Studies and Assistant Director of the China Center for Collaborative Study of the South China Sea. Ashok Sajjanha needs no introduction. Sean Rain, founder and managing director of China Market Research Group, is also with us, and Colonel RSN Singh will be with us shortly. But Mr. Sajjanar, good morning first of all. What's up with the Trump administration? Now, let me just read out the latest from Peter Navarro. He calls him the closest aide of Donald Trump. He says, Modi is a great leader. I don't understand why he's getting in bed with Putin and Xi Jinping. We've got Brahmin people profiting at the expense of Indian people. We need that to stop. Now, really, do we need a lecture on caste from the Americans?
Yeah, thank you very much, Pranesh, and good morning to you and to all your viewers and listeners. No, I think as far as the United States is concerned, for a variety of reasons, which possibly it's not necessary for us to go into here at this moment. Mr. Trump is rather piqued with India, and possibly the most important reason, you can mention BRICS, you can mention tariff talks, etc. But the most important reason is that Prime Minister Modi, told him that he really had no role to play as far as the ceasefire after Operation Sindoor was concerned. So I think that has piqued him, and Prime Minister Modi did not accept his invitation to travel to Washington, D.C. on the 17th of June. So all these senior officers, whether it is Peter Navarro, Scott Bessent, even Marco Rubio, they have been sort of, ranting against India, basically to come more into the good books of President Trump. So I don't think that they should really be, you mentioned yourself, and there's so much more critique that one can provide. But that having been said, I think India is not getting into bed with no one. It was not into bed with the United States. It is looking after its own interests. It is taking care of its relations with other countries on the basis of multi-alignment, multipolarity, and also promoting its own interests. And that is what it did in its conversations with Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping to take the bilateral partnership forward and to promote confidence and see what is possible. And I think the same will be done today when Prime Minister Modi meets President Putin a little later after the SCO Summit. Pranesh.
Shinjoy, rather ludicrous for Peter Navarro, but look, I don't blame him, because here's a man who says that boss is always right. He's taken that book by Robert Greene, Laws of Power too seriously, in which the first law is never outshine your master. So here's a man who says India is in bed with Putin and Xi Jinping, forgets the 90-day concession Trump gave to China.
The important point, Pranesh, is something S. Jaishankar, our External Affairs Minister, had said less than a year ago in Doha. At one point, he was asked that America was drawing India into the American sphere, at which point the External Affairs Minister retorted that India was drawing America into the Indian sphere. And that is exactly where India stands. India stands independently, and India decides what it wants to do based on its national interests. Now, it doesn't matter what Peter Navarro says. It doesn't matter so much in the long run, because he will be president for a while. Donald Trump says, at the end of the day, India has to decide what it wants to do. And India has, since independence, always in a different ways chosen to do exactly that. Whatever you say, India has always said that India stands by itself. The same question was asked to Mrs. Gandhi when she went to America one time, and she said India stands on its own. So it's very clear that India will always look after itself and protect its own interests. So if it's a question of buying Russian oil, well, the answer is to be provided by President Trump, because President Trump had said that I will end the war one day after I become president. He's been president for 200 plus days. So the day the war ends, the prices of oil will come down, and India doesn't have to buy oil from Russia in that case. Remember, before the war began, India's bought about 2-3% of its oil from Russia.
You know, this needs to be said, and it needs to be said in as many words. You have been rather charitable, Srinjoy. It's early morning, maybe you're warming up, and Mr. Sajjanar won't use that kind of language because he's a career diplomat. But we have now RSN Singh joining us. But viewers, this needs to be said that, our foreign policy, Indian foreign policy, does not need an American babysitter. That is what needs to be told. And this is the message to the likes of Mr. Navarro. Tell RSN, in a short while from now, the plenary of the SCO gets underway. More importantly, after that, you have Prime Minister Modi meeting President Putin. And the Americans are already so rattled and riled.
Pranesh, the very fact that, Mr. Putin spoke to Mr. Modi, he called him up, after his Alaska meet with Trump, it just indicates that India is very much in the loop as far as Russia-Ukraine war is concerned, and then followed by Zelensky. Just day before yesterday, he also called up Mr. Modi. Now, understanding the whole problem in terms of geopolitics. Now, see, Russia has got two parts. One is the European part and one is the Asian part. It is the European part, which has muddled up things, for Russia. Whatever reasons they wanted, expansion of NATO, etc., then they cut off that entire energy, lifelines that were there, between Russia and Europe. So obviously, what would Russia do? Russia would gravitate towards India and China. And we already have a fantastic strategic relationship with Soviet Union, and then followed by Russia. So I see, is it anybody's, it is anybody's guess that they will do increased amount of business and strategic cooperation with both India and China. So therefore, I think when the meet takes place, I don't think it is going to be about, bilateral defense cooperation and, those nitty-gritties. I think that they would address the larger global issues. And we stand at the cusp of, major geopolitical churning. It's already on. So therefore, I suppose that, the Americans cannot grudge us, for buying, purchasing oil from Russia. They are willing to sell cheap oil. We are willing to purchase it. Because after all, we have to look after the energy security of the country.
That's right.
And we haven't created the situation. Why did Zelensky call up Modi? One reason I tell you, because he feels that those who are the perpetrators, the NATO, led by US, perpetrators of this war or, initiators of this war, somewhere he doesn't trust them to, resolve this, the entire conflict. So increasingly they are leaning on India, because, India has been, in the true sense, a neutral party. You can't, you can't label our business, interests or our energy interests with,
more than neutral, Colonel Arasan, I think let's use the phrase that, India has been rather practical in its approach, and we mind our business. We don't trouble others like the Americans do. So, having said that, pragmatic diplomacy, the path that we are on, is not getting in bed with. Now, if Donald Trump or his people, if they can't distinguish between the two, then it's entirely their problem, not ours. Mr. Bo, how are you seeing the commentary around Modi's meeting with Xi Jinping? I hope I got your name right.
Yeah, my last name is Ma, but it's okay. I think they are both short and can be first name or last name. I think it's very positive because this is the first time the Modi came to China in 7 years, and definitely a lot of things has been going on. I think instead of purely talk about something in the air, I think it's very good that actually the two party, both China and India, become very pragmatic. They achieve something that matters to both of them. For instance, to resume the direct flights, and they decide about the border issue, the border conflict should not to define China-Indian relations, as both parties have tremendous issues they can collaborate. For instance, in terms of fighting for this unilateral tariff against the U.S. I think China was really the pioneer when the Trump imposed almost like 200% tariff, which is crazy. China stand up. Now Trump imposed this to India as well. From our private speakers, I can feel that India has a very strong antagonism against this, and we share your feelings. So I think if the global South country, they can unite it, they can be a really strong force to get against this unilateralism. I think this summit in Shanghai also showed the solidarity from the global South country. I wouldn't focus more on the security side, but I would like to say this is a conference. It's very timely. It demonstrated the solidarity of the global South against the bully from the strongest power and the most powerful country in the world. I think dialogue should be the only way for us to solve these issues.
So, Mr.
So I really think, yes.
Think of it as this, that you are in a class, you are an associate professor, that you are, and students are asking you about Peter Navarro, what he said, that India is in bed with Xi Jinping. How would you answer your students on this question? This is not just unilateralism, this is delusional behavior and more.
First, I think I wouldn't take any politicians, particularly non-very significant politicians, words too seriously. That's the number one I tell my students. So I think Peter Navarro was not just using this very bad metaphor to describe China-Indian relations, but also he said something very bad to China before, right? Even our Ministry of Foreign Affairs has to come out and to against this. But I think both countries, they definitely have some interest, and I also sense it's actually the deep fear from the U.S. strategic analysts that they feel if China and India can get along with each other, we're not talking about any form of alliance, alignment, but even they get along with each other, they can make progress in tackling issues like security, economics. That will be a huge impact on the U.S. foreign policy. So I sense actually more fear from the U.S. side rather than ignorance.
We'll discuss all of that in detail. Let me quickly bring in Swati. Swati, Prime Minister is all set to speak at the opening SCO members session shortly.
Well, yes, absolutely. That's the latest, Pranesh. Like I said earlier, it is going to be an SCO Leaders Meet first, which is going to commence at 10. Before that, we'll see the Prime Minister speaking during the plenary session, and after which comes the much-awaited bilateral talk between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Russian President, and then the Prime Minister departs for New Delhi. A lot has been talked about Prime Minister Narendra Modi bilateral with the Russian President Vladimir Putin. Also, Donald Trump at the moment must be very, very closely monitoring this, because he's put in all efforts to ensure that he gets the credit whenever the war ends, because it isn't going to end in the near future anytime soon. And perhaps that's the reason why Zelensky also had a phone conversation with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, because he feels that the camaraderie that Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Vladimir Putin share can be a point that can be used by Prime Minister Narendra Modi to push forward peace talks with the Russian president. And Donald Trump must be monitoring this more so because he held a meeting with the Russian president in Alaska. He also met Zelensky afterwards. He said the meeting happened in a positive environment and that he believes there'll soon be a bilateral and a trilateral. Nothing of that sort happening because every single day you see more and more strikes, more and more attacks taking place, and Zelensky continuously asking all his partners to ensure that the ceasefire should happen. In fact, in the conversation with Prime Minister Narendra Modi as well, the Ukrainian president said that the solution to the war is an immediate ceasefire. That isn't happening at the moment. So he's trying his luck with Prime Minister Narendra Modi now to raise this issue in the meeting, and like I said, in 2024 as well, without anybody's pressure, without anybody asking for it, Prime Minister spoke about peace with the Russian president, and that has been India's stand, that this is not the era of war. Perhaps the Prime Minister will raise that issue once again. There will be talks on trade. The most important issue will be tariff, on how India has been singled out despite China being the largest importer of oil. The sanctions, the tariffs on India, additional pressure on India by America, and then you have all sorts of illogical statements coming in from Mr. Navarro, who first said that this is Modi's war, and then again made a statement that India is profiteering out of war and India is keeping the war alive, despite knowing the facts on ground, despite a trade deal between America and Russia that goes on without any criticism, supply of weapons to Ukraine that happens through Europe with a 10% premium that goes in America's kitty. So who's keeping the war alive here? That's a big question, and Donald Trump clearly must be monitoring this bilateral very, very closely.
Yeah, he must be in bed with I don't know who, but he has this habit of jumping the gun. Now, Mr. Rain, you've written extensively on this strong arm tactics by the US. In fact, you've said that the US might try to contain India's rise in the future just as it did with Japan. And now it is trying to do with China.
So the words that we've heard from Peter Navarro for India is upsetting 1.4 billion people in India, as they should. But we here in China have been dealing with Navarro, the delusional bigot, for 9 years. So what I would say to my Indian friends, you need to be very cautious of the United States. Navarro has been delusional. Scotty Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, has said that India is profiteering off of Russian oil. They're using the same type of language and then launching tariffs and in a containment policy in the same way that the United States contained Japan when Japan got strong in the 1980s, the way that the United States has tried to contain China over the last 8 years. It's clear to me that India and China should work together and become the major global superpowers. It's destiny because the countries are smart, hardworking, and most populous nations in the world. But it's also very clear to me that the United States will not allow India to get too powerful. And that's what you're seeing now with what Navarro, Scotty Bessent, and Trump are doing by slapping 50% tariffs on India. Now let me take a step back. Okay, how is China viewing Modi's visit? If you look at Chinese state media, they are throwing out the red carpet to Modi. When Modi arrived in China, they welcomed them with dancing, singing, a red carpet. When the EU, like Ursula von der Leyen and Kaja, the warmongering foreign affairs head for the EU, visited China a couple weeks ago, they put them all on a tiny little bus, had no red carpet, had nobody of any power welcoming them to China. So what Xi Jinping and the CPC are doing by welcoming Modi with such warm words and by putting him front and center in the state-owned media is that it's clear Xi Jinping and the CPC want good relations with India. So what I hope is that my Indian friends would understand America is no friend. If you get too powerful, as you will, they will try to contain you. China is a much better friend. Both countries need each other economically. In order to get rid of the $99 billion trade surplus, in order to get magnets for India, Modi should allow Chinese companies like Xiaomi, like Huawei to invest in India. That'll help spur job employment and economic growth. And it's something that China needs right now because they're being curtained off by not just the United States, but also Western Europe.
Now, thank you for calling Peter Navarro a delusional bigot. That is what I was looking for, but we had saved the best for the last. We have to take a short break. Gentlemen, please stay with us. We are taking a short break. We return to this, and we are set to have Prime Minister Modi speak at the plenary of the SCO.